All right, we can start. Hey, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started with our class. We're glad that everybody's here. We're going to study the Bible together today. I hope you've got a Bible or a phone or something where you can get to the book of Mark. That's 3 weeks in a row that we're going to be in the book of Mark, chapter 10. Mark chapter 10. We started a new series 2 weeks ago that we have called Desperate for Jesus. Desperate for Jesus. And we've talked about a lot of different things. Before I get started, let me drop one quick plug in for the Wild Game Dinner. Don't forget that that's coming up. If you intend to be a part of that, they'll be out on the sidewalk after class. You can stop and get tickets. Hats, shirts, whatever. Remember, everything for that Saturday takes care of the first Saturday in December, which is our toy and coat giveaway. So we always really like to rally and support that dinner on August 24th. That'll help a lot of families here in the Shoals in December. So don't forget that. If you own a business or want to be a sponsor, Josh Bowling will be out there at the table, and he can help you with that as well. But back to Mark chapter 10, all right? We talked about being desperate, okay? And I guess I want you to continue to keep that word or that phrase. What does it mean to be desperate in your mind? We read some definitions of that, and we've studied two stories. So, actually three. Last week was two stories within one. But the first week we talked about those guys that had to get their buddy to Jesus, and they dug a hole in the roof. In Mark chapter 2. Last week, and I really appreciate the comments and texts and things some folks have sent, man, that Chosen series is something. We watched a Chosen video last week to help us learn a little more about Jairus' daughter, and the lady with the issue of blood is the stories that we talked about last week. And I think something that kind of touched or got going, Lou read some song lyrics to us. We said that desperation for Jesus doesn't follow money, class, position, rank. At some point in time, we've all been there. Or we're there right now. I think that may be what I'm starting to get at is a lot of us have been in positions, or maybe you're in a place right now that you feel desperate for Jesus. And, I mean, I saw tears last week from up here out in the crowd. I think that it wasn't me. I had nothing I did. It's the story. It's Jesus ministering to these people in the New Testament, and I believe we're beginning to put ourselves in those stories, which is what I want us to do. That's what I want us to do again today, all right? I'm not going to keep talking about the last 2 weeks. I don't know how much time we're going to need today. Sometimes when we get desperate, we're going to watch a little 30-second video. Sometimes when we get desperate, we make poor decisions. And I've thought this was I've loved this commercial. So I'm not advertising for you to go buy Geico insurance. But it is a funny commercial, all right? Sometimes when you're desperate, you make poor decisions. Let's watch this little 30-second commercial, and then we'll study.
Let's hide in the attic.
No, in the basement. Why can't we just get in the running car?
Are you crazy? Let's hide behind the chainsaws.
Smart. Yeah, okay.
If you're in a horror movie, you make poor decisions. That's what you do.
Shh, I'm being quiet. Breathing on me.
If you want to save 15% or more on car insurance, you switch to Geico. It's what you do.
I don't know if y'all like horror movies. I guess I watched them more when I was in high school. But people seem to always do just the dumbest stuff in those movies. Sometimes when we get in a place of desperation, we might make a poor decision. I want you to, if you will, turn over to Mark chapter 10 and let's study together. We've got some readers that are going to help us today, but before we get to our main text, let me give you let's back up and let me talk to you about just a little bit about what happens before that. So if you'll go to Mark chapter 10 and you look at verse 32, you see Jesus and his followers are making their way to Jerusalem. Okay, now let's just say it. Why is Jesus going back to Jerusalem? What is he getting ready for? Yeah, he is making his way back to Jerusalem for what will eventually lead to the crucifixion and all the things associated with that you know is going to happen. If you look in verse 33 and 34 in Mark chapter 10, he predicts his death again. And then we've got a story right after those verses that we've talked about in here several times. It's a fascinating, I don't know if that's the right word, request where James and John ask Jesus if they can be on his right and left hand when he's on his throne. And that just sets off a firestorm. The other apostles get mad and jealous and they argue. I don't know what prompted that. I don't know if Jesus beginning to talk about the end, they thought, well, okay, it's almost the end. Let's jockey for position. Let's get in the right place. But Jesus right here gives what I want to say is one of the most memorable responses about leadership. In verse 42 of Mark chapter 10. I feel like it's important to remember this is what's leading up to what we're going to study today. So in verse 42, after the disciples are arguing, who's going to be the greatest? And I want to be on the left hand or the right hand. And they're like, John, James, why'd you ask that? Y'all are stupid. So Jesus calls them together and says, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. Leadership principle, that's not John Maxwell or any of those. I mean, all good people written a lot of famous, fancy books. This is the words of Jesus. These are the words of Jesus. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. Does that principle still apply in 2024? That's just for the disciples in the first century. Okay, thanks. I just want to make sure. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Okay, are y'all with me? You just heard that story. Apostles are wanting to be first. Apostles are wanting to have special seats by Jesus. Jesus says, no, this is what you need to do. You need to be a servant. You need to serve others. You need to be a slave of everyone else. So then that leads us to this story, because from here, from that ends, like we turn the page, and they're making their way to Jerusalem still. The first stop is Jericho. All right, are y'all getting it? Like Jesus just said, you've got to be a servant. It's in the little cartoon bubble above his head, like in the comic strip. And then we go to this story. I think I don't know that I've ever really put that together, that we're about to come across a blind beggar. Are you with me? You're starting to see it now? We're about to come across a blind beggar, and Jesus just got finished talking about what leadership was. What's leadership? Oh, okay. All right. I just want to make sure y'all see what's about to happen here. Some of you are grinning. I think you got it. All right, now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to read Mark chapter 10, verse 46 through 52, And Kym Landis and John Pinnell and Stacy Phillips are going to read to us from 3 different translations. You can just keep looking at yours, the one you like. But I want you to listen to the 3 different versions of this story. It's just 6 verses. It's pretty short. We're going to do it 3 times. Kym is going to do New Living. John Pinnell's got the Message. And Stacy's got the easy-to-read version. So let's just, y'all listen and follow along. And just see if you just pick up on anything you haven't noticed before. All right? Like any little detail, like be like the guy on Psych, you know, that notices things that nobody else. Do y'all know that show, Psych? Does anybody watch that? Gina's got me watching this new one called The Mentalist. I think it's from like 20 years ago. They're like using flip phones. I'm like, when did this come out? And he's the same way. He notices things that nobody else notices, all right? So I'll see if you can pick up on something that you've never. I came across something this week. I just can't. I've been so excited since Wednesday to tell you something that I'd never paid attention to. I'm going to tell you in a minute. Baxter, you got to wait. I can't tell you right now. Okay, let's see if you find it. All right, look at Baxter's face. He's so confused. All right. Listen, Kym, lead us off, and then we're going to read these straight through. Everybody, listen. Just see if you find anything you didn't notice before.
Then they reached Jericho. And as Jesus and his disciples left town, a large crowd followed him. A blind beggar named Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, was sitting beside the road. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." "Be quiet," many of the people yelled at him, but he only shouted louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, "Tell him to come here." So they called the blind man. "Cheer up," they said. "Come on, he's calling you." Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "My rabbi," the blind man said, "I want to see." And Jesus said to him, "Go, for your faith has healed you." Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road.
Thanks, Kym. John's got the Message for us. Same account.
They spent some time in Jericho. As Jesus was leaving town, trailed by his disciples in a parade of people, a blind beggar by the name of Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, was sitting alongside the road. When he heard that Jesus the Nazarene was passing by, he began to cry out, "Son of David, Jesus, have mercy on me." Many tried to hush him up, but he yelled all the louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped in his tracks. "Call him over." They called him. "It's your lucky day. Get up. He's calling you to come." Throwing off his coat, he was on his feet at once and came to Jesus. Jesus said, "What can I do for you?" The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "On your way," said Jesus. Your faith has saved you and healed. Your faith has saved and healed you." In that very instant, he recovered his sight and followed Jesus down the road.
Okay, last one. Stacy's got what's called the easy-to-read version. Stacy, it's really easy to read. I'm kidding. Go ahead, Stacy.
Then Jesus and his disciples arrived in Jericho. When they were leaving the city again, a large crowd of people followed them. A blind man was sitting by the side of the road. He was asking people to give him money. His name was Bartimaeus, and he was the son of Timaeus. Somebody told Bartimaeus that Jesus from Nazareth was walking past him, so he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, please be kind to me and help me." Many people were angry with Bartimaeus. They told him that he should be quiet, but he shouted even louder than before, "Son of David, please help me." Jesus stopped. He said to the people, "Tell the man to come here." So the people said to the blind man, "Be brave, stand up. Jesus is asking you to go to him." So Bartimaeus threw away his coat. He jumped up and he came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to Bartimaeus, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to Jesus, "Teacher, I want to see again." "Go," Jesus said to him, "you are well now because you believed in me." Immediately Bartimaeus could see again. He followed Jesus along the road.
Hey, thank y'all for reading those passages. And let me ask this, and you can, if you want to shout some things out, or maybe just did anything jump out at you, maybe that you didn't really notice about this story before? Oh, Baxter.
Yes.
What?
Mark used the phrase, "This is your lucky day."
Which version, which translation had that? The Message. Yeah. It's like somebody like me wrote the Message, though. I mean, right? It's your lucky day. All right, what else? Anything else jump out at you?
I don't know if this is what
I'm not looking for anything.
okay, well,
But you can say,
I thought it was kind of interesting, that was brought to Jesus' attention, that he had the blind man come over to him, and Jesus didn't go over to the blind.
yeah, that is interesting, Ed.
So,
I like it.
what do you think?
Did y'all hear? He didn't go to the blind man. He had the blind man come over to him.
I wonder what that was.
I don't know. No, that's not mine. That's not mine.
I think that's why they said have courage. Because he's not just walking over to you like, I would walk up to you, there's nothing much between us. But he's in a huge crowd of people.
Yeah.
And they say, have courage, go to him. And I think that's why they have courage.
Yeah. See, y'all are noticing some things you hadn't. What you got here? Yes. Well, I think Jesus says that, right? Your faith. Have y'all noticed that phrase has come up now 3 weeks in a row? Your faith has made you whole, or your faith has healed you, or your faith. Are y'all? I didn't really think about that when we got started. All I just kept hearing is that I'm desperate for Jesus, and I wanted to try to find some people in the New Testament that were like me. And here we go. We're talking. Now we're starting to see some connection. Now we're starting to relate to them a little bit. What you got there, Jake?
I confess it's not mine. I read this. That for a beggar in the first century, his cloak was his livelihood because they put him on the ground.
Oh, Jay got it.
So when he threw off his cloak, he shed his past.
Yes. But you're gonna have to let me talk about it a little more.
Please, yeah, because it's a fascinating thing.
I'd never noticed that before. I never paid any attention to it.
I read it. I'm sorry.
I read it too. But when I read it, I was like, run! And Ron's like, what? Leave me alone. No, I'm kidding. He didn't say that. All right, we're going to break this into 2 sections. You ready? All right, we're going to do the first 3 verses and then the next 3. Stories also found in Matthew 20, Luke 18. But like we said, it seems like Mark likes to give us just a little more, just a little something extra. Some details. Like, he tells us the guy's name in his account. But let's look at these first few verses. They went to Jericho. We've already talked about that. He's on his way to Jerusalem. Make sure we pick up on Jesus. His disciples left town. Large crowd followed him. Blind beggar sitting on the road. He hears that Jesus is coming. He began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Be quiet. Many of the people yelled at him, but he only shouted louder. Son of David, have mercy on me. So let's talk about this. We have, every week, we got crowds. Crowds are following him. We see it over and over and over. He attracts crowds. Jesus attracts crowds. Last week I said, does Jesus still, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, does Jesus still attract crowds today? If we hold Jesus up, if we teach Jesus, does he still attract crowds? And y'all were all like, yeah, he does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Because of his healing, his teaching, he cares, and he was different than all the other religious teachers and rulers of the day. All of them were a bunch of fuddy-duddies. Nobody wanted to be around them. Is that a word, fuddy-duddy? I'm so old. Following Jesus in these stories, it seems to take place of whatever else these people are doing. It's like, hey, boss, I'm off today. I got to go follow Jesus. I mean, everybody wants to follow Jesus. All right, just a little side note. Again, y'all know I throw in a little math and time and numbers. I read one commentary this week that said Jesus is about 2 weeks out before Passover right here, okay? And Jericho is around 100 miles from Jerusalem. And remember, they're not Ubering, right? They're walking. So it's still about a 10-ish day journey. So he's got a pretty good trek ahead of him, right? I point that out because if you're in a hurry to get somewhere, do you have time for the blind Bartimaeuses? Well, if you're Jesus, Deriva, I know, but we're not. We're like, oh, I've got to get somewhere. I've got to be somewhere at 3 and 4 and 6 and 8, and then I got to get to bed because I get up early and I got to start it all the way again, and I've only got 10 days, and I've got to. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem that he knows is going to be the crucifixion to save all of mankind. Does he have time for blind Bartimaeus? I just think you need to think about how far it is and how far he's still got to walk. All right, blind beggar. Matthew and Luke talk about him. Only Mark gives us his name. Now, we've already mentioned this last week when we talked about the lady that was sick, but let's go ahead and say it again. He's a blind beggar. So what does that mean for him in this society? We got to say it. He's rejected. He's an outcast. Yeah, maybe unclean. He's a burden. Yeah, he's the lowest class. Right? He's poor. The blindness for many, again, we said this last week, would be a sign to some would say he's a sinner or his parents sinned. Can I say it? How do we see the blind beggars today? If they're out there on the corner of Culver's and Walmart at the stop sign right there at that intersection, and you're trying to turn left in that really hard left turn because cars are coming, it's a mess, and they're coming down the hill, and they're standing there holding a sign, what do you think?
I think most people don't even see them.
Most people don't see them.
They put themselves in that position. They put themselves in that position.
Yeah. I saw they're hiring at Chick-fil-A. Yeah. And I think one of them had cigarettes in their hand. They got money for cigarettes.
That's what they'll go buy if I give them anything.
Yeah, and drugs.
Yeah.
And they're going to steal, and they're crooks. And
Remember the old Bruce Hornsby and the Reigns?
oh, Al's bringing back a song from the 80s. That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Get a job.
Yeah. Guys, listen, I'm just trying to get us, blind Bartimaeus in Mark chapter 10, I'm just trying to get you to tie a little into 2024, okay? This guy, though, look what he does. He starts yelling. Did y'all see that? It says he began to shout. Whatever translation we read, cry out, shout. I mean, just to make sure you get it, he's not going, excuse me, could somebody tap Jesus on the shoulder? Jesus! He is shouting. Oh my goodness, he's making a scene, and all of the people that are following Jesus want to do what to him? Shh. This is a mess, and I'm sure somebody looked away. Here's Jesus. Maybe he's about to tell us a story or a parable, and he's yelling so loud I can't hear Jesus. I can't believe this is happening. Jesus is here, and this crazy, blind beggar is causing a ruckus. Call up Ralph. We need you to go get this blind beggar and get him out of here. We need quiet, normal, clean, not blind, regular people to be around Jesus. Isn't that's what's happening in this? Y'all are laughing, but that's what's happening here in this story. You would think that people that were following Jesus wouldn't tell a beggar to be quiet. What's the 2024 example for us? Now, see, this is where I get into trouble. Y'all see my notes? I type these notes usually on Wednesday or Thursday, and I correct them and retype them, and sometimes I reprint them in my office on Sunday morning, and then sometimes I write in the margins. When I write in the margins is where I get in trouble. The 2024 version, you ready? Y'all ready? I'm going to give it to you. The homeless people that live on our property. And that I have to tell them, be sure you're inconspicuous on Wednesdays and Sundays. Because I can't get people complaining, or they'll wind up telling me that I have to tell you to leave. Did I say it? I said it. I work here, and I had to tell them to be inconspicuous on Wednesdays and Sundays. No, I wasn't told to tell them that. I told them that because I'm trying to keep them from getting kicked out. Is that a 2024 example of blind Bartimaeus? I got to get out of this margin of these notes. If Jesus, I'm going to do one more that I wrote right before I walked over here. If Jesus walked on our campus right now, he just turned in off Cox Street Parkway. He caught a taxi from the Muscle Shoals Airport. And he just came in. Where's he going to go first? Into this class? Is he? Come on, y'all. Y'all been going to church long enough. You've read enough of the New Testament. And whether you like it or don't like it or agree with it or don't agree with it, where is Jesus going to go when he walks onto this campus first?
Go down the hill.
Man, what would happen, Ralph, if somebody started yelling like this in the service? Bartimaeus is desperate to get to Jesus. Bartimaeus is desperate to get to Jesus. Now, here's the question. Here's the bigger question that I think is starting to get us. I think it's starting to churn inside us. Is when I say, have you been there? And maybe you're not blind Bartimaeus, and maybe you're not living down in the woods, but you've got something, man, it's just eating you on the inside, and you're desperate to get to Jesus. We've all been there at some point. We will be, and the only answer is Jesus. Bartimaeus, I think he knew it, and that's why he's yelling. This is my chance. I may not get this chance again. He's right here. I got to get his attention. I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care what anybody says to me if I can just get his attention. And maybe you've been in a car or in a room in your house, in a quiet or a closet or your backyard, and you've yelled out like this. Jesus, you're the only one that can help me right now. Two reminders. If you need Jesus, don't be afraid to get to him. And here's the second thing. We always look at this from two angles. Yeah, maybe you need to get to Jesus. Maybe you're desperate. But my goodness, guys, if somebody around you is trying to get to Jesus, don't be the crowd. Don't be the naysayers and try to stop them. See? You can be that. You can be the person trying to get to Jesus, or you can be the friend that wants to help them. Not just shh, be quiet. He doesn't have time. He's on his way to Jerusalem. He's a busy man. Look at all the people around him. He's busy. He's important. He's blind Bartimaeus. And I think it's interesting that he calls him Son of David. He knows who Jesus is. All right, let's get these next few verses. Sorry I got off into margins. Margins will get you in trouble. Anthony, just delete all that off the internet. Look at these last few verses. When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, "Tell him to come here." So they called the blind man. "Cheer up!" Wow, what happened to these people yelling at him? Come on, he's calling you. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat. He jumped up, went to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "My rabbi," the blind man said, "I want to see." And Jesus said, "Go, for your faith has healed you." Instantly, the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. Y'all have already mentioned this. Jesus wanted Bartimaeus to come to him. I made a note this week that I just feel like Jesus was really interested. He wanted to help those that were on the margins. Luke's account says he commanded them to bring him. Like it was serious to Jesus. Get him over to me. And now here's one thing that we're going to talk about just for a second. What about the change in tune in the crowd here? Did you see the difference? What happened? No, be quiet. Shh, shh, shh. And Jesus says, tell him to come here. And they're all like, ha, oh, yes, Jesus wants you to come over there now. Jesus is interested in blind Bartimaeus, you know? I feel like somebody was going, oh, okay, well, now here, I'm going to get a selfie with blind Bartimaeus. Because, hey, Jesus is wanting to talk to you, right? Oh, I don't want to read all those text messages right now. I'm probably getting in trouble. I'm going to put it on my Facebook page, a selfie with me and blind Bartimaeus. When 15 minutes earlier, I was the one yelling at him to be quiet. There's a change in tune now that Jesus is interested. Now we're going to get to Jay's thing. Jay, I read it, a guy named Dr. David Wolf. He put it in his commentary. He said the coat was essential. See, Mark gives us this detail. He threw aside his coat. Man, I bet I've read that 87 times in the last 55 years, and I've just never thought about this. Not only for keeping him warm, but on a cold day, but for collecting alms. Like Jay said, the coat would have been spread out. You know, he's sitting there begging for money, and he would put his coat out in front of him, just spread it out, and that would just catch. Because, you know, some people aren't good shots. You know, like people walk in my office and then want to throw things in my garbage can in the corner. And I'm like, you're not trying out for the NBA when you could, but, you know, you want to throw stuff. So they throw the alms, and it catches the coins. I mean, this is how the guy survives. And it says he threw it aside. Now, are y'all getting where this is going and what Jay started us with earlier? That adds the faith element to the story. Because faith says when he jumps up to get to Jesus, he's not going to need his coat anymore. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, here's what I'm going to do with you guys. Will you throw your coat? What are you holding on to that could be keeping you from getting to Jesus? If we've got the faith and we're desperate to Jesus and go to him, what's your coat? What's your coat? For this guy, that was his life, basically. It kept him warm, and it got money so he could exist. And he left it. It says not only he left it, it says he threw it. He threw it. Because I think he knew and believed that if he could get to Jesus, that was gone. He needed anymore. Is that faith? All right, Mark Killen. What am I holding on to? What am I not willing to let go of? I say I'm desperate for Jesus, but maybe there's something holding me back, and I'm just not willing to let go of it. Oh, I'm desperate for Jesus, but I'm not going to let go of whatever. I want to keep things the way I want to keep them, Jesus, but I also want you. I don't know, guys. When I read that commentary this week by Dr. Wolf, I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. I want it my way, when I want it, how I want it, all the things, me. Oh, and I'm desperate for Jesus. Yeah, if I'm desperate for Jesus, I got to throw my coat. Last thing, and we'll get you out of here. One of the last questions there, Jesus says, what do you want me to do for you? Did y'all see that? It reminds me of John 5:6, when I think there was another paralyzed or crippled person, and Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he'd been in the condition for a long time. He said, do you want to get well? Y'all remember that story? It's kind of, if you'll go back and look, and if you go back and look in that James and John story earlier in chapter 10, to them, Jesus says, what do you want me to do? Like, he asked them that question. They come to him, and he says, what do you want me to do? I read one commentary that said, well, it seems like it's an obvious question, but it's like Jesus is treating Bartimaeus with respect and not as the lowly beggar like everyone else. It's like last week. I cannot shake it in the video when he reaches and touches the lady's face and he calls her daughter. You know, Frank keeps telling us about getting to know people's story and learn about them. And so maybe we start by talking to other people and saying, hey, what can I do for you? That's a simple thing. Hey, Tim, what can I do for you, man? Ralph, you need anything? What can I do for you? Is that a non-intrusive, non-threatening way? Hey, Al, what's up, man? What can I do for you? Jesus is saying, hey, what can I do? John Curt wrote, Bartimaeus is an impoverished, disabled beggar, and yet he's the first to call Jesus Son of David. He recognizes theological truth that others haven't, that Jesus is in the lineage of Israel's greatest king. In contrast with his disciples, and again, that's just why I wanted you to hear the story of James and John. In contrast with his disciples who were blinded by ambition and insecurity, Bartimaeus sees, I'm doing this again, more clearly than those closest to Jesus. Did y'all get all that? The disciples are blinded by ambition and insecurity. Bartimaeus sees more clearly than those that are closest to Jesus. Last thing, and we're done. The last words in this story in verse 52. And he followed Jesus down the road. I've been thinking about that one all week. If I'd been blind for years, I don't know how long he'd been blind. I'm going to assume that it wasn't a couple of weeks. If I had been blind for years and now I could see, what would I do first? Maybe go see family or friends, or I don't know. But for Bartimaeus, the answer was obvious. I'm going to follow Jesus. I don't know that that's where I would have, I don't know that that would have been my first choice. What you got there, Lonnie?
You remember the lame man he healed?
Yeah.
Followed him, leaping.
Yep.
Praising God.
Yep.
Same way.
Yeah. Instantly the man can see, and he followed Jesus down the road. See, here's the thing. I think he wanted to see, but I don't think it was just his blindness. I think he wanted to be with Jesus. I think he wanted to be with Jesus. I think he wanted to spend time with him, which goes back to our whole original premise and our question for the class is, are we desperate for Jesus? Oh, Lou?
I bet that he would encourage all the other followers to never shush somebody.
He might make a little better follower.
And encourage the ones around him, hey, don't ever touch
Yeah,
anybody else.
because I've been there. And that's so good. That when you've been through something, maybe you can be the one to say, hey, let's lay off of them. I've been there. Whew. Man, that's good stuff. Baxter.
You know, we've mentioned that sometimes from the Greek, it's as if it's happening right now. So Mark puts it, kind of makes the crowd look a little better. They seem to have responded immediately. Now they are doing this.
Yeah.
They're bringing him to Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, they came around.
That's called the Greek historical precedent, and the New American Standard makes that clear anytime that happens.
All right.
You know, this might be, he is thinking in his mind, it might be my last chance to holler.
Yeah, I like it. I understand. Hey, I understand a word for that last chance to holler. I like it. Hey, thank y'all. How about we have a quick prayer and get out of here? And next week we're going to find somebody else to talk about. Maybe the guy with the demons and the demons get put in some pigs. Maybe. I don't know. I can't decide.
We're going to talk about bacon.
No, well, unless you want to bring breakfast for everybody.
There's 2,000 them pigs, too.
Well, I didn't know that, but I'll figure that out this week. All right? All right, let's pray. God, we're so grateful for these stories. That let them just be more than words on a page. Let the stories of the blind Bartimaeuses and the lady that was sick and Jairus, all this stuff, and man, let it affect us and change us and make us be bold and courageous and make us be desperate for you, whatever that means. If we got to throw a coat, so be it. Thank you for your support.